Shalom, giving all praises to the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rachahakorash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders at Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations, as always, to the elect. News and prophecy, where we link the things happening worldwide. All right. As well as here in Babylon the Great, we link these things to the Holy Scriptures so that the faithful elect, the remnant of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, can have understanding through the Holy Spirit as to what is going on, as there is so much happening. All right. We're not even halfway through, all right, January of 2026, and so much has happened and is happening. All right. And all of this chaos is going to, eventually, lead to the powers that be establishing order, as we are witnessing many psyops, pride, as the hammer of the earth, Babylon the Great, marches throughout the four corners of the earth, all right, by the orders of the Amalekites, the small hats, the tiny tops, okay, to ultimately heap up resources, all right, and prepare themselves to lead the way into the new world order, okay, as we are witnessing, all right, pride at its all-time high, all right, which the Heavenly Father, all right, has put this devil here, Trump, in power over Babylon the Great, which we know, U.S. presidents aren't really rulers. They do the bidding of the elite. All right. But it's a beautiful thing to see, Trump galvanize, the patriotic Babylonian, all right, or American, all right, into believing that something is being set in place to help them. All right. When ultimately your own elites are preparing to enslave your asses as well. All right. But just like in ancient Rome, there was an illiterate class that ultimately were brainwashed by their leaders into believing that the moves that they were making really benefited them. All right. While it didn't. And this is what we're witnessing as you see Trump announcing the construction of the Triumphal Arch, all right, in Washington, D.C., all right, to begin in 2 months. All right. President Donald Trump has announced that his long discussed plan to construct a Paris-style Triumphal Arch in Washington, D.C. is moving closer to reality, with construction expected by early 2026. Okay. And as they embark on their 250th year of dominance, okay, he is preparing an ark. Now, arks mimic the Western Roman Empire in many ways. As a matter of fact, I asked here, all right, how does this particular ark that Trump is, because it's a Paris-style triumphal arch, all right, that mimics the Arc de Triomphe that's in Paris, which it all goes back, all right, to the Western Roman Empire. We are witnessing, all right, the beast and his image live right before our very eyes. All right, it says a triumphal arch in Washington, D.C. would be a direct symbol, all right, or symbolic echo of ancient Rome, all right, and their dominance and their military might. Okay, it says whether intentionally or not, Rome did not invent arcs for beauty alone. They were political theology in stone. See that? Political theology in stone, as he's establishing himself as God on earth. Okay. Here's how the mimicry works in a deep historical and symbolic level. Triumphal arcs were Rome's language of power. In ancient Rome, a triumphal arch was never neutral architecture. Okay, it meant something. It says what Roman architects meant: built to celebrate military victory, all right, dedicated to a specific leader or campaign, placed along processional routes, used during triumphs, parades, where generals were exalted. Then it gives us some examples: Titus, Constantine, Septimius Severus, which, the latter two were Jakes, all right, but it was still pretty much of the Roman Empire, although You had the Eastern Roman Empire through Constantine and Septimius Severus, which were Jakes. But um, the Ark of Titus celebrated the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD, right? It says Rome used architecture to shape collective memory. Roman arcs did three things simultaneously: rewrite history, as this devil is trying to do, all right, from his narrative, all right, sanctify the state, educate the masses visually, all right, like we're really winning. They were propaganda, religious symbolism, civic indoctrination. Most Romans were illiterate. See, stone taught what scrolls could not. And if you look at the average everyday American, even though they may know how to read and write, they're really illiterate. They're stupid. They're dumb. They don't know that they're left from their right. All right. So to see, Trump get in office, although nothing's happening to, better their lives, to see him, you know, um, point the finger at Jake, point the finger at immigrants, point the finger at this, so say stop, drug trafficking in, Venezuela, pointing to the tribes as being a problem. They're happy. And as long as they can dominate, all right, and wage war, as the scriptures say, let's get that in the book of Revelation, the 13th chapter. Okay. This was the mindset centered around the ancient Roman Empire, and it's still, all right, embedded in Babylon the Great, which is the revival of ancient Rome. Okay, this is the book of Revelation 13:3, and I saw one of his heads as it were wounded unto death, the fall of the Western Roman Empire, which led to the Eastern Roman Empire, right? It says, and his deadly wound was healed, and the world wondered after the beast. So the deadly wound being healed, as we always go into, speaks to the Renaissance, which is the rebirth of the ancient Western Roman Empire. All right. And as we always show you, it also had remnants of Greek culture, all right, branded into the earth. So the deadly wound of the Western Roman Empire was healed via the Renaissance, which we are living, all right, through the Spanish, the French, the British, okay, Babylon the Great, the small hats as well. We're living literally, all right, doing and an extension of that Renaissance, which is now going technical with artificial intelligence in their left hand blessing. It says, and they worshiped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast? Who was able to make war with him? And this is the mindset, how Americans worship their military power. Again, although none of the spoils of what they heap to themselves through these military campaigns benefit these patriots, all right, to see, their leaders dominate and be the hammer of the earth and the bully of the earth. It gives them a sense of patriotism. It gives them a sense of being. As long as he can point the finger at the tribes, point the finger at immigrants, point the finger at the poor as the reason as to why there are no resources for them, they love it. As ICE is, moving on people, they love it. They have no problem with it. Okay, so the mindset towards Babylon the Great is who is like unto the beast, who was able to make war with him, because again, America has its allies as well, which we're going to show you a few things showing you that these allies are getting ready to basically renege, all right, on this confederacy that they have. See? So we're living in a time of great prophecy. But again, this particular arc, before we get into these videos and a little bit of things happening, because there's so much happening. You got this guy here, all right, boasting and building an ark, and that means something. That's not just him, all right, building an ark. Again, as we're showing you here, okay, most Romans were illiterate, all right. Stone taught what scrolls could not. A modern ark functions the same way, even in a secular age. So it basically gives people, it educates you that we're winning. Okay, and indoctrinates you as propaganda, of course. Washington, D.C. is already neo-Roman by design. This is crucial. The Capitol is a Roman temple. The Senate is a Roman institution by name. showing you that we are living, all right, and we're witnessing the image of the beast live and speak right before our very eyes. Columns, domes, of course, coliseums, forums equal Rome. Eagles, all right, fasces, all right, historically. Laurel moffats equals Rome. So we're in Rome all over again. All right. The US founders consciously borrow Roman Republican imagery. So a triumphal arc completes, all right, the Roman civic grammar, moves symbolism from Republican Rome towards Imperial Rome. All right. It marks its shift in tone, not just in design. All right, then it goes into, the particular one that Trump is modeling his after, which is the one that is in Paris, tied to Napoleon. All right, which Napoleon modeled himself after Caesar, Augustus, Constantine. All right, Rome, Napoleon. All right, equals modern empires. A Washington art would not be copying Paris; it would be copying Rome through Paris. All right, you can look, more of it up, but point blank period. All right, as the scriptures say, the pride of this man's heart. Okay, let's get that. The pride of thine heart. Okay, Obadiah. All right, verse 3. Matter of fact, we'll start at 2. Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen. Thou art greatly despised. And the Western Edomite, as well as the small hat, they're despised more than any other Edomite worldwide. Okay, and they're putting a stench on the Edomite legacy, which is already a stench on it, but they're only here to complete what they started, all right, and to be taken down by who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. But they are greatly despised. They're small among the heathen. They're not, their woman's womb is still. They're not having a lot of children. They're not populating. Okay, the future looks, bad for you Edomites, and they know it. This is why they're in a rush to poison everything, all right, and set up this NWO. The pride of thine heart have deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the cleft of the rock, right? Because ultimately this man is a caveman whom the Lord, all right, brought from out of the caves, right, after the dark ages, all right, to bring about the revival of Rome, which was to fulfill prophecy, the deadly wound being healed, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thy set thy nest amongst the stars. This dude is talking about building data centers, all right, in the heavens, man. Okay. You got space stations, all kind of stuff set up in the heavens, though we know it's only so far he can go. It's his pride that this scripture is addressing. And when you look at this devil here, what do you see in front of him? The eagle. Okay, though yes, different, empires bore the eagle. Nobody did it like you Edomites. Okay, nobody did it like you Edomites, man. So this arc that he's setting up, all right, is represents pride. Okay, the most proud. Let's get that in the scriptures. Okay, most proud. Okay, Jeremiah 50:31. Behold, I am against thee, O thou most proud, saith the Lord of hosts. For thy day has come, the time that I will visit thee. See, so the Lord is getting ready to visit these devils, and the most proud shall stumble and fall, and none shall raise him up. See, so this devil is getting ready to fall. I will kindle a fire in his cities here in Babylon the Great, and it shall devour all round about him. So things are getting ready to get bad, but the Lord has this devil in a trick bag. He's put a spirit of pride on him, all right, to go throughout the four corners of the earth doing wickedness, all right, and boasting himself, as we know, in the latter days, all right, pursuing the biblical prophecy, his look would be more stout than his fellows, all right, because also when we get the book of Obadiah, as we'll get into this as well here, all right, Obadiah verse 7, all the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border, the men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. See, they that took on to this debt, okay, to basically forward the agenda of Babylon the Great. All right, these European countries and NATO countries that have aligned themselves with Babylon for the purpose of forwarding her dominance. Okay, they're getting ready to turn on her. See, there's a wound being laid for this devil, and pride is at the forefront of it. As we just witnessed what happened in Venezuela, although there was a lot of propaganda, okay, Esau Edom is going to hoard the resources. That's really what it all boils down to. All right, and he wants less China, Russia, and Iran influence, all right, in these Latin countries, all right? So before we get into this video, I want to play this particular video here by Economic Warning. Real good video. I'm going to play some minutes of this, basically to give you an overall understanding of what's actually happening behind the theater of Maduro and all of that, and what this devil is really doing off camera. All right, which goes, this dude is ruthless, so it's deeper than just him, so say taking this guy hostage and his wife, which they're in on it, from looks of it. Somebody from the inside had to allow, Babylon in, all right, for no type of defense to be taken, all right, upon a foreign government coming to seize your president. All right, basically it had to be an inside job, just on that alone. All right, but let's listen to this, because he gives some good insight onto what Babylon and what's happened economically and politically as Babylon the Great asserts itself.
The airstrikes, the arrest, Maduro in handcuffs, oil reserves, legal debates about whether it was an invasion or law enforcement. But that phase is over. What we're watching now is something different, something that will matter far more than the drama of one Saturday morning in Caracas. Venezuela is no longer the headline. It's the case study. A case study for how the United States uses power, how China uses restraint, and how Latin America judges both. And here's what most analysts are missing. The operation handed China a propaganda victory. China calls for law and dialogue, while the United States bombs neighbors and threatens the region. Venezuela wasn't the crisis. It was the test run. And the world graded it. Today, I'm going to show you what's actually changing. Not just what happened in Venezuela, but how that operation shifted perceptions across Latin America, strengthened China's diplomatic position, and revealed a fundamental change in how American power operates. This is about structure, about credibility, about what happens when coercion replaces persuasion as the primary tool of influence. Let me walk you through what's unfolding, what actually changed this week. First, let's establish how the story moved, from event to structure, from shock to legal process to international response. Power in Venezuela is being formalized through U.S. courts. Maduro faces federal charges in New York. That pulls the entire situation into American judicial machinery, creating legal frameworks that will shape what happens next. But the international reaction is what changed the dynamic. This isn't just condemnation from a few countries anymore. It's a regional response, a bloc response. Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, Chile, Spain, Uruguay issued a joint statement condemning the operation. Not individual statements, joint. That's significant because it shows coordination. It shows that Latin American governments see this as a shared threat, not just Venezuela's problem. And the United Nations system is now under strain. Multiple countries have accused the United States of kidnapping a head of state, conducting regime change without Security Council authorization.
Small among the heathen and greatly despised.
And violating the UN Charter's prohibition on using force against sovereign nations. The UN Independent International Fact-Finding Mission on Venezuela stated that alleged violations by Maduro's government do not justify military intervention that breaches international law. So the issue shifted from, was this legal under U.S. law, to, does international law mean anything when a major power decides to ignore it? And that question has implications far beyond Venezuela. The new tool of American power. Let's be clear about what's happening structurally. For decades, American influence rested on alliances, institutions, and economic integration.
As we're going to show you, those alliances are being broken up in these latter days to fulfill biblical prophecy. But it's through pride and the stoutness of Babylon the Great that would be at the forefront of, all right, this alliance breaking up, all right, this confederacy.
Countries wanted to be part of the U.S.-led system because it offered stability, growth, and predictable rules. That foundation is eroding. And what's replacing it is economic coercion backed by the threat of force. The United States now relies heavily on sanctions, courts, asset seizures, energy choke points, and control over financial infrastructure.
Which is going to cause a lot of tension that's going to lead to World War III.
According to 2024 data, 60% of low-income countries are under some form of U.S. financial sanction. The U.S. imposes 3 times as many sanctions as any other country or international body. This isn't coalition building. This is pressure application. If you don't comply, you're cut off from dollar-based financial systems. If you try to bypass those systems, you face secondary sanctions that punish anyone who does business with you.
This is why you got the BRICS nations, which the priest Tazama did a good video on that. They're basically trying to develop a gold-backed central bank digital currency, okay, to operate outside of the dollar.
And now, as Venezuela demonstrates, if economic pressure doesn't work, military force becomes the next option. But here's the problem. To much of the world, this doesn't look like leadership. It looks like coercion. It looks like threats rather than partnerships. And that changes how countries calculate their interests. Because if working with the United States means you might be the next target when policy priorities shift, why would you tie your economy to American systems? This is the strategic contradiction. The more the U.S. uses economic pressure and military force to maintain dominance, the more incentive other countries have to reduce their dependence on U.S.-controlled systems.
Let's get the book of Jeremiah, chapter 50, and 51 and 44. It says, "And I will punish Baal in Babylon, and I will bring forth out of his mouth that which he swallowed up, and the nations shall not flow together any more unto him. Yea, the wall of Babylon shall fall." And these are the times where we should be repenting, coming out of her spiritually, because the Lord is getting ready to deliver a great blow to this place while they're at the height of their pride. You see?
The China effect, how America lost the optics war. And this is where China enters the story. Not through military action, not through threats, through positioning. China won a propaganda victory without firing a shot. Beijing framed itself as the defender of sovereignty and international law. It condemned the U.S. operation as a violation of the UN Charter.
So this is going to have the world looking at being allied to America as being allied to war and unnecessary, moves being made, whereas China can position itself to say, well, see, we're here for peace. Look at these niggas. See? Which is ultimately playing in the hands of Russia, in the grand scheme of things, prophetic-wise.
It called for dialogue and respect for Venezuela's right to resolve its internal affairs without external interference. And here's the key part. That message resonated across Latin America because what Latin American countries saw was this. China builds infrastructure in their countries. The United States bombs their neighbors. China offers loans and trade deals. The United States threatens tariffs and sanctions. This isn't about morality. China's government has its own record of coercion and control. But in this specific contest, in this specific region, China positioned itself as the stable partner, while the United States looked unpredictable and aggressive. Brazil's President Lula said the operation was, quote, a grave affront to sovereignty and an extremely dangerous precedent. Colombia's President Petro condemned the strikes and said conflicts should be resolved by people themselves in peace. Mexico called it a clear violation of Article 2 of the UN Charter. These are major regional powers, and they're not just criticizing the operation. They're signaling that they see the United States as a less reliable partner than they thought. We tried to scare China. We ended up advertising for China because every country in the global south is watching and asking, if the United States can do this to Venezuela, what stops them from doing it to us if we make decisions Washington doesn't like? Latin America, from partners to skeptics. Now let's talk about what this means for the hemisphere, because the Venezuela operation didn't happen in isolation. It's part of a broader pattern of threats and pressure directed at multiple countries. Trump's administration has publicly threatened or pressured Colombia, Mexico, Cuba and Panama, Colombia over migration policy, Mexico over trade and border security, Cuba, as always, Panama over the canal. And Venezuela is the proof that these aren't just rhetorical threats. They can escalate to military action. So Latin American governments are recalculating. For decades, the default assumption was that aligning with the United States offered economic benefits and security guarantees. Now that assumption is being questioned. Countries are now choosing between two models: predictable Chinese economics, loans, infrastructure investment, trade deals with clear terms, versus unpredictable American power that can shift based on domestic politics, social media posts, and sudden policy changes. China offers long-term contracts and doesn't care about your internal governance. The United States offers access to the world's largest economy, but demands alignment on foreign policy, trade rules, and increasingly political decisions. For many countries, especially those that have been on the receiving end of U.S. pressure, the Chinese model is starting to look more attractive. Not because China is morally superior, but because it's more predictable. And that shift from seeing the U.S. as the natural partner to seeing China as a viable alternative, that's a strategic loss that will take years to reverse. The oil story with new context.
All right, so check out this video. I mean, this basically gives some groundwork to everything we're getting ready to explain. As America's asserting itself, these moves are actually going to work against them in the long run, and it's setting them up for isolation and to lose more allies. You see? But again, the Lord has hardened his heart, just like Pharaoh. All right, someone in their right mind would know, okay, I'm doing a little bit too much, but the Lord has a very, very stern, stout, hardened spirit on this guy, just like he hardened the heart of Pharaoh. See? So we'll come back to this, if the Spirit allows, as pretty much, see here. As you see here, Trump warns there may be new targets in Latin America. Okay, there may be new targets in Latin America, man. Okay, so these devils are not getting ready to stop. Netanyahu orders Israeli military to prepare for World War III. Okay, and we'll get into that if the time permits. But hey, war is in these devils' hearts, man, because they have but a short time. They've been outed. It's over for them. So the only thing left is to use propaganda to, blame. They're going to play the victim and ultimately bring out that sword and establish, this technocracy and AI, because they're getting ready to do away with the government and elections and everything that you knew. Okay, 2026 is going to be crazy. All right, it's going to be bitter, but it's going to be sweet, and it's happening fast. So this is from Dabu 7. All right, as the beast is on the move, Fortress America. Trump threatens to take Greenland and Cuba to keep control of Western Hemisphere. Okay, which we're going to show you how. Let's look up Fortress America and see what that is. All right, Fortress America refers to both a strategic board game where U.S. defends against global invaders and a political concept advocating for U.S. isolationism, economic self-reliance, and military strength, emphasizing national sovereignty over international alliances. See, national sovereignty over international alliances. All right, and this is what Babylon is ultimately trying to do. They're trying to set themselves up, okay, to be at the forefront of this NWO. Now, we know the elites are playing all sides, right? But Trump is threatening to take Greenland and Cuba, and as we just read here, all right, he said there's going to be new targets in Latin America, as well as Colombia, Mexico. All right, and we're going to show you how these moves are going to lead towards biblical prophecy of the beast hating the whore. So without further ado, let's play this.
Really going on with the...
So this is Dabu 7, right?
So what is really going on with the military around the Caribbean and all these moves being made? Well, it doesn't end now that they got Maduro. They're showing their hand and also showing that it's not just about the drugs and the drug boats, the excuse they used, the bomb.
And from it looks like Maduro was in on it. There's a lot, a lot of videos coming out explaining stuff on that, but we'll hold off on that because basically at the end of the day, because there's so much confusion, all right, it's all just you can pretty much just sum it all up, and the Esau Edom is on the move. Okay.
On their way up to get Maduro. Now Trump is warning the new leadership that he ain't happy with them either, and they can catch the same wrath if they don't listen to what he says. So this isn't over. You also have Trump popping off warnings in everyone in the neighborhood, saying specifically to Colombia that you better watch your tail because they're coming. And that Rubio turns around and warns the same thing about Cuba, saying that Cuba had leadership that was inside of Venezuela, helping them the entire time, and that they are largely responsible for trying to protect Maduro throughout this whole thing. Whether it's true or not, that's what they're saying. It's the preface and a reason for them to go to war and to try to seek regime change in Cuba. They are taking over the...
And they're lying about the drug trafficking. That's a proven lie. Okay, they're just basically looking for reasons to raid, to take, to heap. As the scriptures say, that's what they would do. Okay, Habakkuk. Okay, because you need resources for war. You need resources to set up this NWO. All right, and again, this is a horrible plan. Okay, this is the book of Habakkuk, chapter 1. Speaking of the Chaldeans, but we know that the modern day Chaldeans are this Babylon the Great. Habakkuk 1:8. Their horses are swifter than the leopards. They're hunters. They're good at it. All right. They're the hammer of the earth and are more fierce than the evening wolves. And their horsemen shall spread themselves, and their horsemen shall come from far. All right. They're spreading themselves thin right now, just like ancient Rome, all over the earth in conflict. They shall fly as the eagle that hasted to eat. They shall come all for violence. Their faces shall sup up as the east wind, and they shall gather together the captivity as the sand. And they shall scoff at the kings which were witnessing, and the princes shall be a scorn unto them. They shall deride every stronghold, for they shall heap dust and take it. Resources. This is ultimately, all right, because when you look up the importance, all right, the importance of resources for war, okay, they're fundamentally important for war, okay, so they need these resources, providing fuel for conflict, oil, minerals, the means to fight, for advanced tech, raw materials, and the logistical support, food, water, labor for armies. With control over valuable resources, often driving disputes, all right, financing prolonged violence, and enabling technological advantage, making energy and strategic materials vital for national security and military success. And the crazy part about it is, where does these resources come from? The Most High himself, all right, through Yahweh Shai and Elohim created all of these things. And here it is, this man is boasting in himself, him to be God, but he didn't create these things. Okay? So, and it goes into more. You can pause it and read that. But resources are very important. And they know that they're getting ready to go to war. So the Lord is guiding the minds of these devils to do what they're doing. Okay?
The entire Western Hemisphere, if not outright going in and bulldozing through everything with their military, they're going to try it diplomatically. If you're an ally, you kind of keep your peace. If not, there's going to be some kind of military action. And it's going to go from Venezuela to Colombia, right on up through Mexico. Cuba feeling the wrath now with the warnings, and they're making it clear. They're not stopping until they get Greenland. Greenland up in arms about this, like, yo, we're supposed to be peaceful. We're a part of NATO. We're already allies. Why ruin the friendship? And Trump and them are like, we're taking it. We have to have it. That's
Listen to him again.
already allies. They're not stopping until they get Greenland. Greenland up in arms about this, like, yo, we're supposed to be peaceful. We're a part of NATO. We're already allies. Why ruin the friendship? And Trump and them are like, we're taking it. We have to have it. That's what he says. Never before have you ever seen someone so brazen to say, oh, you got what we need. We're coming for it. And straight going in and taking all the assets.
And this is what the scriptures described. Okay? This is the book of Daniel, chapter 7. Okay? And 19. Then I would know the truth of the fourth beast. All right, which was diverse from all the others. It's speaking of Rome. All right, but we know Rome will be revived through the what? The little horn. All right, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and nails of brass, which devoured, brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet. You know, Rome was able to dominate, and this is where Esau, Edom, was able to establish his legacy in the earth. The Greeks did it, but the Romans did it even better. And the 10 horns, right, that were in his head, okay, which were ultimately the vassals of the ancient Western Roman Empire, the Lombardies, the Visigoths, the Vandals, the Sueves, and so forth, right? Which today that mimics, all right, the EU, right? Vassals to this new Rome, which is here in Babylon the Great. Okay? And the 10 horns that were in his head, and the other which came up, see, the other which came up, all right, and before whom 3 fell, all right, the Spanish, the French, and the British. The Revolutionary Wars led to the 13 colonies, which now is the 50 United States. Even of that horn, a horn represents power, okay? It says that had eyes and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. You see that? Babylon the Great's look is more stout than his fellows. And these moves, all right, that are being made are going to lead to its own allies turning on him. Okay? So when you hear Trump talking about taking Greenland, you may just think, oh, okay, that's just the devil being, but this is prophecy. Okay? And as Dabu was saying here, never before have we seen pride on this level.
So when they just went into Venezuela, they got their hands on like a massive supply of gold, silver, okay, oil, and the silver chief right now. They just
look. I mean, Trump says Venezuela will turn over up to 50 million barrels of oil to the U.S. and he will control the profits. Okay, and he will control the profits. That's pride. See. And the Venezuela people, you know, some of them are celebrating because they didn't like what Maduro was doing. And, you know, foreign invaders were, you know, basically leeching off of their resources like, you know, Russia, China, Iran, so forth. But what the hell y'all think America's going to do? Trump is talking about basically, yeah, you know, it's going to, we're going to control the money, but eventually it'll benefit the people of Venezuela. Well, it's the same thing he's telling you Americans. Give us 2 years and what we're doing is going to benefit you. Why your rent's high, your food's high, you're sick, you're dumb, musty, lip hanging. See? And just screaming and arguing back and forth about nothing, vanities at the forefront. You have nothing. Nothing's been done to help the patriotic American or the average everyday American, period. The working class is completely still being ignored. Okay? But you know, the talks of ending the ubiquitous community, the LGBT and DEI and, you know, immigrants being a problem just really has you Americans thinking that, oh yeah, he's doing something to help us, but nothing's being done to help you. See, you through. And Venezuela is not going to benefit off of what they're doing, the moves that are getting ready to be made. They're getting ready to set up the technocracy over there. Okay? The MOTB system is getting ready to be set up over there. Okay? The bidding of the elite is getting ready to be done over there.
just announced they're going to open up a smelter here in the United States, $7 billion smelter, to process minerals all of a sudden like silver. So you can guarantee a lot of this stuff, as Trump's already said, they're going to take out of the earth in Venezuela and they're going to use it for our defenses. That's what he's saying. He's saying it's all national defense. And if anybody's got anything to say about it, well, what are they going to do? Catch a drone strike? So this is going to be interesting to see how this plays out with Denmark. I feel like he will try to diplomatically approach them with like tariffs and trade stuff. And he'll do all these things first before trying to send military to surround Greenland. Although we can send ships up around both sides, because he says if you look up both sides, all you see are Russian and Chinese ships. So in terms of protecting America, Fortress America, this is what they're looking to build. And as I said before, it matches the TechNate map of Elon Musk's grandfather, where they want to control everything from Alaska, Canada, Greenland, all of North America, basically down into Central America, into Venezuela. The outline of a North American Union is what it matches. And this is Fortress America. This is not going away. The strikes are not going away. They haven't even got started with operations in Mexico or anything with Cuba. This is big. And at some point, there's going to be blowback, you can guarantee. So this is what they're aiming for. No doubt about it. The whole Western Hemisphere, they want to lock down cold. And this is where we sit. Join me for the live streams where I talk.
Okay. Let's go here.
President Trump is now renewing his calls to take over Greenland just one day after the military operation ousted Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Watch this.
I will say this about Greenland. We need Greenland from a national security situation. It's so strategic. Right now, Greenland is covered with Russian and Chinese ships all over the place. We need Greenland from the standpoint of national security. And Denmark is not going to be able to do it, I can tell you.
Well, the Danish prime minister hitting back, saying, quote, I have to say this very directly to the United States. It makes absolutely no sense to talk about the United States needing to take over Greenland. The U.S. has no right to annex one of the three countries in the Danish kingdom. Secretary of State Marco Rubio also sending a warning to Cuba's communist government, accusing them of propping up Maduro, warning the country's leaders are, quote, in a lot of trouble.
So there you go. Okay, and what I was saying earlier is pretty much what I typed in here, just to give you a quick rundown. How could America taking Greenland affect NATO? Okay, America taking control of Greenland would have major political, legal, and strategic consequences for NATO, most of them destabilizing rather than strengthening. See, the Lord is weakening this alliance. All right, even through the talking point of taking Greenland. Okay, these EU and NATO nations are growing weary with Babylon the Great. At least in the short to medium term, here's a clear breakdown. NATO is built on consent, not, coercion. Greenland is an autonomous territory of Denmark, and Denmark is a founding NATO member. So here it is, you got the stoutness showing. His look is being more stout than his European fellows. And we know that there's tension between the America and Europe, period. They hate you Americans over there in Europe. And you Americans over here, look at them as proud. All right? It says, and throw up some prayers for me. I feel like I'm coming down with a little something. All right, but I feel my body fighting it. But it says, if U.S. took Greenland without Denmark's consent, it would violate NATO's core principle of sovereignty and mutual respect. Okay? So we see this man operating in pride. Babylon, the hammer of the earth. That's what the scriptures call it, right? The hammer of the earth. All right? Because looking at how America moves and how powerful it is, how exactly is it going to be taken down? It's going to be taken down by exactly what we're seeing. Its allies, aligning themselves eventually with Russia, Iran, China, and so forth, to just come against their asses, man. Okay? And Trump is talking about naval ships, from China and Russia over in the area of Venezuela. Okay, they don't want that. Okay, because when war breaks out, everybody's going to ultimately, all these elites don't agree. Although we know the elite are behind all of this, they don't agree on everything. And each All right. And we know historically Esau, Edom has never gotten along. Even while they're dominating, they're at war. So what do you think? They're going to go into the New World Order and this MOTB system and everything's going to be agreed upon? No, the Lord has differences of opinions. Okay. They don't agree economically. They don't agree politically. They don't agree with the pride of Babylon the Great. They don't agree with the warmongering via the small hat. Okay. There's a lot going on. Jeremiah 50 and 23. How is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How has Babylon become a desolation among the nations? I have laid a snare for thee, and thou art also taken, O Babylon. Now, didn't we just read the same thing in the book of Obadiah? But it worded it differently. Okay, it says here, Obadiah verse 7. All the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border, and the men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee, and they, all right, and prevailed against thee, and they that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee, and there is none understanding in him. See, that wound is this very snare, all right, that we're reading about here, okay, in the book of Jeremiah, the 50th chapter. Okay, I have laid a snare for thee, O Babylon, and pride is at the forefront of that snare, believing you're untouchable. See, again, as we just read here in Daniel, the 7th chapter, his look was more stout than his fellows. Okay? He's feeling himself right now. And the Lord got the right leader in there, all right, to help them to, move along with that. Now, going back here, because, a few articles here, we ain't got to read them, but you just read the titles. This man is he's on a war path. Okay? Trump warns Cuba, Mexico, and Colombia could be next. He's talking about Greenland, Cuba, Mexico, Colombia. All right. If this is done, and even the talking point of this is bringing tension amongst Esau's alliance. Okay, it says if America took Greenland, it will violate NATO's core principle of sovereignty and mutual respect. Okay, which ironically, Trump is talking about the Monroe Doctrine. All right, which basically kept European powers from coming over here to the West and trying to set up shop. But look what he's doing. Create a precedent where a NATO member can be coerced by another. Division. See that? This would fracture the trust inside NATO, especially among smaller European states who already fear dominance by larger powers. This is why they're going to have to what? Merge with Russia, all right? Form alliances outside of America, which the priest Tazama did this video here. Okay, check this out. Okay, BRICS, all right, which particular EU and some NATO countries are even, talking about, becoming a part of this. Okay, BRICS unveils gold-backed central bank digital currency to challenge the dollar. So war is coming. Basically, what this all, at the end of the day, war is coming. Okay, BRICS launches gold-backed currency and central bank digital currency network, an accelerated push to de-dollarize by 2026. So again, we just read, they that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. And best believe, as America rubs more and more countries the wrong way, more and more countries, although it seems impossible, don't get it twisted. The dollar is dominant. The dollar is if you ain't, using dollars, pretty much it's hard to get your hands on resources and particular things and trade like that, right? But we're living in a time where things are getting ready to change, man. Okay? So BRICS, what is BRICS? All right, and that smelter he was talking about. All right. You can read on that. Let's see here. Are any EU or NATO members part of BRICS? All right, so right now, no. All right. But as you can see here, all right, well, the UAE is a part of it, which is was an ally to America. All right. However, Turkey, a NATO member and EU an aspiring EU candidate, has formally applied to join BRICS. You see what I'm saying? And what is BRICS? Basically, a move to create a currency to trade around a dollar. Okay. So we don't see too many NATO or EU countries joining them. All right. However, as things continue, keep your eye on this situation. All right. Letting you know that the MOTB is near as well. But a gold-backed central bank digital currency. That's very interesting. So check out this video, Soldier of Yahweh Yahweh Shai. All right. Going into that. Now, let's see. Where was I? Okay. Let's go back here. I believe this is where I was at, but if not, we'll get back to where it was at anyway. It says, just hours after the U.S. invaded Venezuela and seized President Maduro, President Trump issued a thinly veiled warning to governments of Mexico, Cuba, and Colombia. And when you look up this Maduro thing, I believe it was in the Call of Duty in 2023, the very same scenario that happened with him was already in the game. Predictive programming. We're seeing a lot of witchcraft. However, prophecy is being fulfilled. And these devils are on the move. Okay, now going back here. All right. If Babylon takes Greenland, it says this would fracture trust inside NATO. All right, especially among smaller European states who already fear dominance by larger powers. NATO depends on unity. This would signal that power outweighs alliance law. See that? And this is what America is on. All right, with this nationalist ideology, America first. America got to be at the forefront of everything. Article 5 would be politically weakened. Article 5 says an attack on one NATO member is an attack on all. See, and as the small hat in America does all of this wickedness, it continuously gets vetoed. The UN is supposed to come in and step in and say, nah, we can't do this. But all of these moves that they make, which violate Article 5 in international law, they continuously are able to do it. If the U.S. pressured or seized Greenland, other members might quietly ask, and quietly because they're scared of this nigga. He's a bully. If America can take territory from a NATO ally, will it really defend us when it's, all right, inconvenient? So what this is going to lead to is these particular NATO allies of America saying F you. And as they get deeper and deeper into getting what they want with this NWO, interests are going to change. Okay? We're getting ready to see America in the small hat, all right, surrounded, forsaken, isolated, and destroyed. It says some countries would reduce military cooperation, all right, hedge towards neutrality, meaning we got to fight for ourselves then. See, because Revelation, the 17th chapter, breaks it down. Okay? Revelation 17 and 16, and the 10 horns which thou sawest on the beast, these shall hate the whore and shall make her desolate and naked. So these EU and NATO countries are going to destroy this place. They're going to align with Russia, Turkey, Iran, and all of these, you know, because Turkey is a part of NATO. But you see there's tension and friction there, especially because of the small hat. See, the small hat is getting ready to lead Babylon the Great into, you know, being destroyed. It says, and shall make her desolate and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. For God hath put it in their hearts to fulfill his will and to agree to give their kingdom unto the beast. And this agree is that consent, that alliance, that confederacy. The word agree is poieo. Okay. Let's see here. To be the authors of a thing, to carry out, to execute, to make ready, and so at the same time to institute the celebration of the Passover, promise, all right, to carry out, to execute. So they all agreed, okay? They all made this alliance, all right, after World War II, all right, for the benefit of the Edomite. See, but America was at the forefront of it all. As you can see here, they would agree to give their kingdom into the beast system until the words of the Most High be fulfilled. And we're right about that time where they're getting ready to renege, all right, on this agreeing. And this is what Daniel, the second chapter, talks about. Going back here, okay, it says, seek EU only defense structures. See, EU only defense structures, which we've been showing you the friction between the EU and Babylon. All right, it says the U.S. already controls Greenland military. Ironically, strategic reality. The U.S. already controls, because the U.S. is the biggest. All right, pretty much the biggest military in NATO. All right, what I believe. French is up there, you know, Turkey's up there, but America is really the face of it all. It says, ironically, America already gets most of what it wants without owning Greenland, but it wants more. He can never have enough. Habakkuk, Habakkuk, right? See, these scriptures are coming out more and more every video, but it's the same, it's happening. It's speaking. Habakkuk 2:5, yea, also because he transgressed by wine, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home. Wow. Who enlargeth his desire as hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. And let's look up this word. Let's look up this word, keepeth at home. All right. Na-wa. All right. Na-wa. Okay, let's see here. It says, and shout out to Karatazar from GMS Vegas. We were laughing about this because when he put it into the chat, I was like, man, I'm going to bring this out and act like I found it. It says, he is a proud man and does not rest, but seeks disturbances and wars. Who's this talking about? Who's this talking about, man? Sheesh. He won't sit his ass down. He's not gonna do it. He's not gonna do it. It's crazy. I've been feeling terrible all day, and I'm doing this video. I feel good. See? So it says, let's see here. So America already gets most of what it wants without even owning Greenland. All right. The missile defense arc, Denmark has never blocked U.S. military access. So what more do you want? NATO already treats the Arctic as a shared defense zone. We all share this. What do you want? Okay. So a takeover would bring minimal military gain, maximum diplomatic damage. From NATO's perspective, ownership adds little, cooperation adds everything. So look, we had this alliance, we had this, you know, this particular agreement. You know, what are you doing? Europe would see it as imperial overreach, just like America is saying, you know, through the Monroe Doctrine, which when you look up the Monroe Doctrine, let's just look up what it is real quick. What is the Monroe Doctrine, right? The Monroe Doctrine is a U.S. foreign policy established in 1823 by President James Monroe that warned European powers against further colonization or interference in the Western Hemisphere, asserting the Americas were closed to new European colonies, and such an attempt would be seen as a hostile act. In return, the U.S. pledged to stay out of European conflicts and internal affairs. And have they done that? Hell no. Creating separate spheres of influence. We control this side of the world, and you control that side of the world in their pride. And see, the earth has been given into the hand of the wicked. This is why they're able to do all of these things. See, this devil is on a tirade, man. Okay. So Europe will see this as an imperial overreach. Okay. Many NATO members, especially France, Germany, and South Europe, would view a U.S. takeover as the 19th century empire politics as a return to 19th century empire politics. Proof that the U.S. prioritizes dominance over partnership. I mean, is not this the prophecy? Calls for a European army. This could accelerate the calls for a European army, as we just read. The beast, all right, the beast is going to hate the whore. Strategic autonomy from Washington. All right, what does the word autonomy mean? So you can know. Okay, independence, basically. All right, autonomy is the capacity of self-governance, allowing individuals to grow or groups to make independent decisions. All right, align with their own values. See that? So all of the moves that have been made over the years have been made to benefit the team, especially Babylon. But now Babylon's like, F y'all. So this would lead to less willingness to follow U.S. leadership on China, Russia, all right, or Western Asia. Because ain't no such thing as a Middle East. But we'll just, you could say Middle East just for, saying it, but that's a made up term. You don't go into the scriptures and see Middle East, you see Asia. So this would what? Lead to less willingness to follow U.S. leadership on China, Russia, all right, and the so-called Middle East. So meaning ultimately these countries could tend to then side with moves that benefit China and Russia. NATO might survive, but with the mere divided command structure. You see that? Russia and China would exploit the rift. See, this is prophecy. Ezekiel 38, both Russia and China would benefit indirectly. Russia could say NATO is hypocritical. Look at how they treat their own allies. China could push European states toward economic partnerships. See that? Undermine U.S. moral authority in global forums. Even if Greenland strengthens U.S. Arctic posture, NATO's global legitimacy will weaken. Okay? The NATO only stable path, all right? So two scenarios. Denmark consents to a transfer, highly unlikely. Greenland becomes independent, then chooses close alignment or association with the U.S. Anything else risk internal NATO crisis, long-term alliance fragmentation. Woo! Okay? If America took Greenland without a consent, NATO unity would suffer. Trust in Article 5 would weaken, which these devils don't play by their rules, man. All right? Let's go to Daniel, the 2nd chapter. This is beautiful. Let's go to Daniel, the 2nd chapter. And we're going to keep bringing these things out. Give a damn if you're tired of it. Go watch a debate. Go watch somebody debate whether the Hebrew we've received is the right Hebrew, or whether the mark of the beast is an embargo. Or keep playing. Rome, all right? Daniel 2:40, Rome. All right, the 4th kingdom shall be as strong as iron. Okay, and when you deal with this 4th kingdom, let's get 2nd Esdras 11. Come on, man. 2nd Esdras 11. All right, and 39. Okay, Rome, are not thou it that remainest of the 4 beasts whom I made to reign in my world, that the end of their times might come through them. So the end is going to come through Rome, but Rome will be revived. And that's where you got to go in the prophecy of the deadly wound being healed, because we know the end didn't come after the Western Roman Empire fell. There was 1,000 years where Jake ruled, okay, which was hidden until this truth came out. Now everybody knows about it, how Jake ruled in Europe and so forth, the Moors and all that history. But after that 1,000-year period, okay, the Satan was loosed, right? And from that point, he went throughout the 4 corners of the earth, all right, to bring about the end. See, waging war, lying, ruining governments, poisoning people, stealing resources, right? And the 4th overcame all the beasts that were past and had power over the world with great fearfulness, and over the whole compass of the earth with much wicked oppression. And so long time dwelt he upon the earth with deceit. For the earth hast thou not judged with truth. Now, this is talking about Rome, but we know Rome will be revived. So that which is then is now, it says, for thou hast afflicted the meek, thou hast hurt the peaceable, thou hast loved liars, and destroyed the dwellings of them that brought forth fruit, and hast cast down the walls of such as did thee no harm. See, destroyed the dwellings of them that brought forth fruit, resources. Okay? Therefore is thy wrongful dealing come up to the highest, and thy pride unto the mighty. The highest have also looked upon the proud times, and behold, they are ended, and thy abominations are fulfilled. So we're living in that time, okay, where the revival of Rome, which is the kingdom in which the Lord was going to send his only begotten son back, is being divided, okay, and prepared for war, which is going to lead to the destruction of Babylon the Great. Daniel 7:19. Then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which is diverse from others. And we know Rome was diverse from others because they brought in their kings via voting in the Senate, which that's all reestablished here today. Exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were iron and his nails of brass, which devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with his feet. See, this Rome, okay, gave this Edomite his authority in the earth. Okay, let's get Revelation 13. This is Revelation 13:2. See, and the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard. The beginning of this beast system started with the Greeks, with Alexander, right? And his feet were as the feet of a bear, because it's going to end with the might of Russia gathering all of these different nations. Okay, because Russia is going to be at the forefront of these European nations saying we gotta deal with this whore, right? It's too much. BRICS, which is a the we talked about, the currency to trade outside of the dollar. Russia's involved in that, which really, I believe that's a code, because there's no way you're going to formulate a currency to beat the dominance of the dollar. I believe that's just a code for a military alliance. Okay? It says, and his mouth was as the mouth of a lion, all right? Because basically, the British Empire, okay, was used to what? Bring forth all of the doctrines, the philosophies, the policies of the ancient, all right, Western Roman Empire, and that's where America was born. See? So there's the deadly wound has been healed. So the mouth, which is his policies, the culture, everything, the image, pretty much, is being reborn. And the British Empire birthed the 13 colonies. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. What dragon? Okay. Revelation 12. All right. And 3. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on his head. See, the red dragon. See, the dragon, Rome, is what gave this beast system its authority, and that's the authority that it's running with until this day. Why do you think Trump is talking about establishing an ark? As we showed you in videos earlier, even this AI transhumanism agenda, it's off of the back of Greco-Roman gods, which really they borrowed from the Sumerians and the Canaanites and all that garbage. See that? Which, where did they get it from? The serpent in the garden. Okay? So Daniel, the 2nd chapter, right? In the 41st verse says, whereas thou sawest the feet, the end of this vision, which speaks to the Europe, headed by Babylon the Great, of course, the modern revival of Rome, right? And whereas thou sawest the feet and the toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it the strength of iron, for as much as thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay. So they're still dominant with the sword. They were blessed with the sword, but they're divided. See, they're divided. And as the toes of the feet were partly iron and part clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And this is what we're witnessing. Okay? with Trump, okay, if he does, what's another one? If he does take Cuba, Mexico, and Colombia, how would that ruin this alliance? Okay? If the United States were to take Cuba, Mexico, and Colombia, whether by force, coercion, or regime change or to impose control, it would affect, all right, the effect on NATO and the EU relations would be catastrophic, far beyond anything Greenland would cause. This would represent a collapse in the post-World War II Western order. And this is what Revelation 17 chapter goes into. See? As it currently exists. This will mark the end of the current NATO order. Let's get this video real quick.
Two social media posts from the administration to bring you up to speed on here as we watch these shifting tectonic plates of geopolitics. The first one from the president of the United States, sharply critical now of the NATO Western military alliance. The president saying on social media a short time ago, Russia and China have zero fear of NATO without the United States, and I doubt NATO would be there for us if we really needed them. Everyone is lucky that I rebuilt our military in my first term and continue to do so. We will always be there for NATO, even if they won't be there for us. The only nation that China and Russia fear and respect is the great DJT rebuilt USA. Make America great again. That coming from the president of the United States in apparent response to criticism from some that he is seeing about the White House's statement yesterday suggesting that the U.S. May use military force to try to take over Greenland.
There you go. Woo! Now, to get a little bit more on this, but you can look these things up on your own, but it's good to know. This will mark the end of the current NATO order. NATO is not just a military pact, but it's built on four moral pillars: sovereignty, territorial integrity, which America hasn't showed that, collective defense, rule-based order. If the U.S. absorbed or dominated three sovereign nations, none of which attacked the U.S., all right, which we just read, they destroyed the fruit of them which brought forth fruit and people who were at peace with them. NATO's founding logic would be void. Article 5 would become politically meaningless. NATO would still exist on paper. See? But trust will be gone. Many European states would conclude NATO is no longer protects small states from great powers, and it enables one. So what are those smaller states going to do? They're going to join with Russia. They're going to join with China. They're going to join with Iran. See? To formulate their own beast system as Babylon the Great and the Small Hat are isolated. See? And Turkey's going to side with Russia. That's prophetic. China, we know they're going to side with Russia. Right? It says Europe would likely fracture away from U.S. leadership. The reaction would be severe. All right? Emergency EU summits, sanction or legal actions against the U.S., suspension of intelligence and defense cooperation, accelerated push for a fully independent EU military. Countries most alarmed: France, Germany, Spain, Italy. Smaller states, all right, fear precedent. And you could, this mimics what was going on in the ancient Roman Empire. This could lead to a de facto NATO split. US-led bloc, EU-centered defense bloc. NATO would survive only as a shell alliance. Latin America will unite against the US. This scenario would validate the worst fears of U.S. imperialism. Now you have allies of your enemies, all right, in your in your hemisphere, all right, close to you. Trigger content-wide backlash could create a Latin American security bloc. Countries like Brazil, Argentina, and Chile would seek defense and economic alignment with China and Russia. See? And see, this is what Ezekiel, the 38th chapter, prophesied, man. Okay? Real quick, which we have lessons going into this whole chapter. Ezekiel 38 and 4. And I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws. Speaking of Gog and Magog, or Gog of Magog. All right. It says, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and will bring thee forth all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor. And as you see, Russia is back in that dominant USSR spirit, that Soviet spirit. This is by design. Okay, and they have an evil eye towards the West. Although sometimes things seem like they're okay between them, it's not. It's going to get bad. Even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. Persia, which is Iran, Ethiopia, and Libya with them, all of them with helmet and shield. All of them armoring up themselves, aligning themselves. And these are all countries that America has effed over or is trying to F over. Especially Libya. Come on now. Ethiopia, I'm a good. What did the British do there? See? America is currently trying to disrupt Iran and take over, right? All of them with shield and helmet. Gomer, right, which is parts of Turkey, and the house of Togomar in the north quarter, and all his bands and many people with thee. This is speaking of Turkey. See? And many people with thee. China go be up in there, right? Be thou prepared and prepare thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. So many of these smaller nations that know goddamn well they can't stand up against the Western dominance, okay, are going to, okay, Russia's going to be a guard unto them. All right. A place of confinement. Ma Shamar. See? A place of confinement. They go into big bro, the big bear. Okay. So ultimately, this could lead to defense and economic alignment with China and Russia. The Monroe Doctrine will be seen not as a defense, but as a domination. Russia and China would gain, all right, enormously without firing a shot. Russia would justify its actions in Ukraine and elsewhere, undermine NATO credibility worldwide, pull neutral slates into its orbit, position itself as the defender of its sovereignty, as a defender of sovereignty. So these different nations, as you see, China, all right, will position itself as the defender of sovereignty, expand Belt and Road in Europe and Latin America, undercut U.S. moral authority in the UN. The U.S. would win territory but lose the world order. And that's what the elites want anyway, because they're getting ready to bring about a new world order. But it's a snare for Babylon. Okay? Economic fallout would be immediate and severe. EU and U.S. economic relations, trade relation, technology decoupling, and dollar dominance questioned more aggressively. See? Dollar dominance is questioned more aggressively. So as we're reading in Daniel, the 2nd chapter, right? They're partly strong, all right, and they're partly broken. All right? They got the sword, but they don't agree economically. They don't agree with moves being made. They don't agree on who should have what. And they're questioning this alliance that they had. Whereas thou sawest, Daniel 2:43, iron mixed with miry clay. You put iron and try to bind it to clay and try to bind it to iron, it's not going to stick. All right. They shall mingle themselves with the seed of men through alliances, through marriages, to form alliances, and, you know, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. Okay. And when you read this in the NLT, it says what? The mixture of iron and clay also shows that these kingdoms will try to strengthen themselves by forming alliances with each other through intermarriage. And when you look it up, okay, were the alliances made in early Europe and America done by intermarriage? Let's see what it says. Yes, intermarriage was a crucial tool for forging alliances in early Europe and the Americas, used by the European royals to unite nations, by colonist traders with Native Americans to build economic, social, and military partnerships. So, they done their wickedness amongst the tribes too. All right. And you could look at a movie, The Flower of, I forget, it's a movie. I forget the name of this movie. The Flower. Uh, it's a movie. Um, this damn movie. The Flower of yeah. This is the Killers of the Flower Moon. Okay, how Esau Edom, after the men were all, he would kill off the men, and then he would make marriages with the women, the native women, and pretty much get access to all of the land and the oil, because these were particular places where Esau agreed to give to Gad as reservations, but they would find out some of these places they gave them were rich in oil, so they would come back and do wickedness to take it over. But you look up this movie, Esau Edom is the devil, man. He is the devil, and these are small hats too at the forefront of a lot of this wickedness. Anyway, yes, intermarriage was a big part of how these royal dynasties were merged. So again, going back to what the scriptures say, they will form alliances and get, the control in certain regions in the world, but they shall not cleave one to another. They're not going to agree. None of these alliances are going to stand. And we're looking at moves being made that are at the forefront of that. See that? Call halal Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. Okay? NATO members could stop quietly cooperating. Okay? This would signal a return to empire politics, world wars. Okay? Colonial collapse, international law. U.S. will return to empire. Betrayal of the post-1945 principles. A warning that no ally is truly safe. And all hell is going to break loose. And this is what prophecy says is going to happen. Let's look at some of this video here. Right? And we'll get up out of here. This is the trouble Trump is stirring up. Larry Johnson and Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis. Okay? Sooner or later, bullies get what's coming.
To pretend that we're the greatest, we're the best. And, listen, I don't want to, the tier 1 units of the United States Special Operations Forces, yeah, they have incredible abilities, but they've got also limited capabilities. And, ruling a nation, running day-to-day governance is one of them. Going in, doing a snatch and grab, yeah, they can do that. But this was not done in a hostile environment. Let's put it that way.
This opens up a can of worms, proverbial can of worms, but there's some real questions here. One of the things that we have been, crowing from the top of every telephone pole in Washington, D.C., and every television camera that they can get in front of is how this incredible operation that only the American military could have pulled off is a signal to everybody. And I mean, from Vladimir Putin to Xi Jinping, all these folks. And in fact, specifically mocking the Russians, we had Secretary of War Pete Hegseth throw this gem out.
We saw 3 nights ago in downtown Caracas in Venezuela, as nearly 200 of our greatest Americans went downtown in Caracas. Seems those Russian air defenses didn't quite work so well, did they? Downtown Caracas, and grabbed an indicted individual wanted by American justice in support of law enforcement without a single American killed. Reestablishing deterrence.
Okay, so public are buying this, especially the Western public, because we're loving it. We're beating our breasts and stuff. But I'm thinking, and of course, he's mocking the Russian air defense. Oh, they didn't work that good. That was terrible, etc. But if
you heard him say Americans love this, these illiterate, stupid Americans, I mean, somehow they think that this is a victory for them, but this is all benefiting the elites, And yeah, the Lord got Russia and China kind of being docile, like you gonna just let your homie get rolled on like that, but things are gonna change. Okay, but the mentality is who shall make war with the beast. Nobody can stop which Babylon is at the forefront of. Nobody can stop this devil. That's the mindset.
If what you're saying is correct, if the information that you've had and what you've seen from the video evidence is that they didn't even fire, so we could have been just been hammered, especially those helicopters. If they had started firing anti-aircraft missiles or even shoulder-fired missiles, I mean, those things could all have been shot down.
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah, no, this was done with the cooperation of a source within the highest levels of the Venezuelan military, intelligence, and law enforcement services. That was a good cooperator, and that convinced others, money talks. And a lot of people secured some of their retirement savings out of this. Just all they had to do, turn off the weapon systems, look the other way, and then, come back in an hour, and your life goes on.
Okay, so that raises yet another disturbing question. If any version of what you just said happened, and evidence suggested it did, then whoever was cooperating on the inside set the stage for at least 32 Cubans to get killed that were providing apparently security, at least what's been reported, and 80 people altogether, their own guys. So by telling people to turn stuff off to make this show, as you said, work, we had to come in and a lot of stuff had to get actually blown up. I know at least one air defense unit was hit because I saw some of the missiles getting cooked off and just going up in the wreckage and stuff. But I mean, that would seem to be a problem if somebody for some jack on the inside made these calls, people stood down, but then a lot of people got killed. How's that going to play out inside Venezuela?
As long as it wasn't their family members, they don't care. These people are expendable. You and I have been around long enough. We've seen this kind of political theater. We saw it in 1989, December 89, going into Panama. We saw it again with Operation Desert Storm back in 1991. We saw it again in 2003 with the Operation the Iraqi Freedom. So, and the initial reports where they come out, it's a great story, made for television, but we never really get what was going on behind the scenes. And this one doesn't add up. You don't get this many aircraft. And, if Hegseth is dumb enough, surely he doesn't believe what he's saying, that he thinks the Russian air defense systems are not up to can't match the U.S. prowess in the air. Just look at how many F-16s have been shot down in Ukraine. I'm sure those Ukrainian pilots or U.S. pilots that were in them have a different story to tell.
And we hope that
this is the Colombians' response to Trump. Wait. He said, "Come and get me."
Meanwhile, a row has erupted between President Donald Trump and his Colombian counterpart, Gustavo Petro, as it seeks to deter the U.S. from replicating military action in its country. The U.S. president already calling Colombia's leader a sick man who runs cocaine mills while speaking to Air Force One reporters last week.
And you Edomites love coke. You ain't worried about coke being brought into the U.S. because you benefit off of it. That's your, that's like how weed is to niggas, coke is to Edomites, okay?
Today, President Petro issued a statement on social media saying, "Trump speaks without knowledge. Stop slandering me. If the U.S. bombs, the campesinos will become thousands of guerrillas in the mountains. And if they detain the president, which a large part of the country loves and respects, they will unleash the jaguar of the people."
So things are getting interesting. So it's getting ready to be a lot of chaos in these Latin countries.
We begin today's show looking at the U.S. attack on Venezuela and the abduction of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife.
Well, this is complete. It was something funny, some funny business going on here. There's a video, call for an uprising did on it. But again, I don't want to get too much into that. Even here in America, there's getting ready to be chaos.
Let's bring in
You have the situation where an ICE agent shot, someone in Minnesota. Something's going on in Minneapolis. Keep your eye on that place. Okay, but with this
Alabama Senator, the great Tommy Tuberville, who I guess still running for governor. Senator, you're running for governor still, right?
Yes, sir. Signed up this week to run and looking forward to campaigning.
The ICE shooting. See?
2.16 million square kilometers of the world's largest island rests in the hands.
Hold on. Here we go.
We've got several videos showing the moment that an ICE agent fired his weapon in what ICE says was self-defense. For more on that, let's bring in Carrie Urban, Fox News legal editor and former counselor to Attorney General Bill Barr. Carrie, good to have you with us. And I think we want to just get a look at these videos. Let's do that right now. That's number one. You see the agent who was in front of that vehicle. Here's number two. Let's watch this. There's no audio on this, so just watch quiet as we watch this unfold as well. That second one harder to see. It's from across the street. We have a third video that we also are cleared to use now as well. Let's take a look at this one from a higher angle. And you see this is the car after the shooting as it plows into two cars that were parked on the street there. Carrie, your thoughts on these videos and on what you just heard? We've got just 20 seconds left.
What we don't have video of, Martha, and it's very important, is what happened right before that. And context and circumstances matter because that's what's going to matter in the court of law. These situations are always very fact specific.
And Trump, I believe, damn, there was a video I had where Trump is saying, he had a response basically saying,
a woman in Minneapolis is dead after an ICE-involved shooting. These are live orderly obstructing.
This is what Trump said. I've just viewed the clip of the event which took place. It's a horrifying thing to watch. The woman screaming was obviously a professional agitator, and the woman driving the car was very disorderly, obstruction and resisting, who then violently and willfully, viciously ran over the ICE officer who seemed to have shot her in self-defense. Based on the attached clip, it is hard to believe he is alive, but is now recovering in the hospital. The situation is still being studied. So it's all kind of stuff happening, man. But listen to what it says. It is entirely, the situation is being studied in its entirety, but the reason these incidents are happening is because of the radical left. See that radical left there? They're keeping that left-right paradigm in your face. It's threatening, assaulting, and targeting our law enforcement officers and ICE agents on a daily basis. They are just trying to do the job of making America safe. We need to stand and protect our law enforcement officers from this radical left movement of violence and hate. Because, see, these Democrats, okay, are calling for ICE to get out of their states. Okay? Minnesota Democrats voice outrage after fatal shooting. Leave our state immediately. And this has been the sentiment. But see, what you're getting ready to see is the left-right divide take the streets. Okay? Things are getting ready to get crazy. Egyptian against Egyptian. Division. Okay? And out of that chaos, these devils are just getting ready to set up an order. It's clear as day what's going on here. All right? But we'll get more into this. All right? And more in coming videos. But after all of this is done, only 1% of the Epstein files have been released. Boy, this devil is something else, man. So hopefully y'all edified. I'll leave it there. Shalom.